After World War II, the Soviet Union and the US were the two main superpowers of the world, a rivalry between capitalism and communism. Communism was growing in Europe and the US was getting afraid of it. The Cold War showed how quickly it could fall to communism. The USA was afraid of the domino effect, which is that if one state fell to communism, then many more will after it. On March 12, 1947, Harry Truman, the President of the United States, presented a speech about aid to countries threatened by communism. It would give economic and military aid to those fighting communism. When Britain stepped out of giving aid to Greece because they could not fund them anymore, the US stepped in and said they'd give $400 million in aid for Greece and Turkey, since Turkey would fall if Greece fell. The US funded the Greek monarchist army in the civil war against the communist side. Rivalry between the Soviet Union and the US grew, dividing the world into two major armies. The US became more involved in European affairs because of the Truman Doctrine. Americans proposed a policy to help stop the spread of communism throughout Europe. This is referred as the Marshall Plan. George C. Marshall wanted $13 billion to financially aid Europe. This would rebuild economies and the currency, and all of this would open up trade between the USA and Europe. Many countries were destroyed during the World War and many people became poor because of it. The US stated that poor people will want communism because it is the easiest way out of poverty. The US wanted to have more countries become capitalist because they were afraid the whole world would become communist. They also hoped that this would make countries turn from communism to a democracy. A new policy US brought up was containment. This was to stop communism from spreading to other countries but not destroy them. This was offered to all countries, including the Soviet Union. In order to qualify for it, the country needed to use the money the way the US wanted them to use it. Stalin told all his satellite states to not accept this offer, since he saw through the plan to make countries capitals. In the end, Western Europe recovered quicker, and Europe was divided into two. Stalin was going to give aid to his own countries. Both the Truman Doctrine and the Marshall Plan led to the formation of NATO. Its objective was to stop Soviet aggression in Europe. It was created in 1949, and the Berlin blockade showed a need for NATO. At the beginning, there was 12 main countries in united defense. NATO is the Truman Doctrine in action. The Soviets had tested its own nuclear bombs, which meant nuclear parity between the US and the Soviet Union. The USSR also made the Warsaw Pact, which is the same thing as NATO for Soviet satellite states. The purpose was to provide collective security against the Soviet Union. The 12 countries agreed with an attack against one was an attack against all. NATO has still lasted and now has 28 members, even some of the Soviets' own satellite states.